Hey folks, Justin from Tackle Tactics. Today I wanted to share with you a session where I went freestyle fishing. So basically I throw the kayak in and I just drift with the tide. So I'll select, say, an hour of run in and then an hour of run out. So I basically just catch the tide for an hour, flick different structure and bait and things that I come across, tide turns and I come back again. So it's just really simple, no specific area or species that I'm targeting. I just freestyle my way with the tide and then come back again. So good fun, nice chilled way to fish. And in this session, I'm fishing the new HeadlockZ Finesse UV painted jig heads, and I'm pairing them up with one of my favorites, the ZMan SwimZ 2.5 inch. So hope you enjoy this vid. Just fishing these new jig heads on a favorite plastic and just freestyle fishing with the tide. All right, fish on. Oh, yep, there we go. Oh, yeah, drilled it. Oh, that was nice. On the pause, he hit that. That was great. I just felt a tiny little tap and he drilled it on the pause. And that's why, grunter, that's why I felt that tiny little tap. Grunter, love it. Brilliant. Not a big fish, but a cool fish to start the session. Just doing that freestyle fishing, just drifting, covering water, sticking around that sub 2 meters. So at the moment I'm in 1.1 meters and just covering water. That was with the, whoops, sorry buddy, that was the 1/8 ounce 1.0 in a bloodworm color with a blood oil ZMan 2.5 inch SwimZ. That was nice, he crunched that. So we'll just keep covering water. I'm basically, there's a wind behind me, so my other tip, if you are just freestyle fishing and getting out there, is remember to consider your wind. So the wind could impact your drift one way or your drift the other. So for me, I've had to paddle a little and drift on this morning because the wind's blowing against me. But the cool thing is when the tide turns to take me back home again, is I don't have to battle the wind home. So I can just do a nice drift home with the wind. So remember to consider the wind on any fishing adventure, but especially if you're just heading out and using the tide to carry you around, you want to make sure that the wind's not going to be working against you too hard. The other thing is with that wind coming sort of from that side of me, behind me, I'm fishing back this way, and that way I can use the wind to throw long casts and cover water. So I'm drifting with the tide, but the wind is blowing over the tide. So I can fan this whole area with my casting, and I can bring my lure back naturally with the tide, and the wind assists me with a long cast. So freestyle fishing, make sure you consider the wind in terms of A, your drift, and B, using it to assist you with your casting and that sort of thing. I'm just drifting a big bank at the moment, so you can use your beacons in the area that you're fishing to help you find the shallower areas and that sort of thing, or the edges. So if you're not familiar with the area you're drifting, I can see a line there in the water, a turbulent line, so that probably signals a drop off or channel edge. But I can also see the beacons around me, and I can use those beacons to help me find banks that I can drift, edges that I can drift, and that sort of thing, so that I'm fishing in the sort of depth that I'm looking for. If you had your heavier presentations on and you were wanting to fish deeper water, you'd be fishing totally different to me. So there's a beacon there, I'm on the bank, you'd be off the edge of the bank fishing either side with your deeper presentations. So it just goes back to having that plan. Either have a mixed bag of head weights so you can cover any depth you drift across, or sort of plan to fish shallow or deep and rig up based on that decision before you've got out there. Your vermin. Alright, scent up. Don't forget to scent up whatever type of fishing you're doing, but especially in this sort of situation here, we're just drifting along with the tide, covering as much water as we can, looking for active fish. So when we do find them, we want them to hit our plastic aggressively, hold on long enough for us to set the hook nice and solid. We want them as much opportunity as we can to stay pinned to whatever we come across. Oh, fish drilled it. Oh, brilliant. I just adjusted my position, came out a little, and that fish just drilled it as it hit the water. Oh, what are you? You've got a bit of stick. What are you? Cranky? Have I jagged you when that lure landed, or have you eaten it? No, that is a nice solid. Oh, it's another grunter. He's a good grunter. Geez, he took it as soon as it hit the water. That is a beautiful grunter. So that's our silver grunter, or spotted grunter. So that's a good thing, because he's the one that can be a bit smaller. So Sherry Lee loves a grunter, so that grunter may be dinner. Again, that headlock's 1/8 ounce. Oh, settle down, buddy. Oh, power. Oh, got me. 1/8 ounce. 1-0. HeadlockZ Finesse. He's a solid fish. He's cranky. Oh, he pinned me with the head. Oh, I'm going to grab the jig head, hold that solid, and then get a grip on him. Get him out of that net. Oh, he's cranky. Look at that. That's a nice grunter. Hard work hanging on to him. He's got a lot of power in him, that fish. Alright, a few grunter on this flat this morning, so that's pretty good. We don't mind catching a few of those guys. They go hard, especially on that light spin gear, 1 to 3 kilo gear. Put him on the measure. That's got to be 30, that bloke, so he's going to be comfortably 30. He's 37, that guy, so that is a really nice silver or spotted grunter. Beautiful eating fish, so we'll take that one home for Sherry for dinner. Blood oil, rapidly becoming a favourite colour in the slim swims. Blood oil with that bloodworm head, a really, really awesome combination. Alright, fish on. A couple of nice grunter to kick things off. What a cool way to start our freestyle fishing drift with the tide session. So another thing to remember when you are just doing this type of session where you just jump in, drift with the tide and drift back again, is you need to consider timing, how long you want to be away for. So you've got to take the weather into account and the wind, as we already said, but how long do you want your session to be? Because basically if you want to do a 2-hour session, just grab the last hour of run out tide, do an hour one way, turn around, do an hour back the other way. If you want to do 4 hours, do 2 hours drifting and 2 hours drifting back. So normally you get a bit of slack time when that tide turns, so that could add a little bit of time to it, but you roughly want to be drifting one way for a set amount of time, drifting the other way for a set amount of time, considering the wind, of course, as we said, because that wind could speed you up in one direction or the other, or it may be a cross breeze and may not impact you, or there may be no breeze at all. So just consider how long you want to be out there on the water so that you can plan the timing of your drift with the tide. The good thing about hunting on a flat like this on an incoming tide like we are, the water's moving up onto here. The fish can't get here at low tide, so they are fired up. They're up here looking for food. So it's a matter of us covering water, mixing up our retrieves, mixing up our colours and presentations until we find what the fish want to eat, or until we find some active fish. So just keep covering water. Over time, if you're fishing the same area a fair bit, you'll start to build a bit of a profile of the area. You'll know where the deep bits are, the shallow bits are, the edges, the weed, the sand, and where those fish like to feed as well. Fish might feed in particular areas more aggressively and hold there at different stages of the tide more so than other areas, so it'll help you work that out as well. Yep, there we go. Oh, big long cast, wind at my back, using that wind to make that long cast, and that way I'm only in 0.9 of a metre of water, but by making a long cast, the fish are a long way from me. They don't know where I am. I'm sitting low on the flats in the yak. Big long cast, and again that fish just drilled it right at the end of the cast. As soon as it hit the water, that fish was on it, because they're up here feeding and they're feeding aggressively. I think we got ourselves another nice grunter. Yep. Yeah, that's a beautiful fish. this time we changed things up, switched up the colour. I know that blood oil colour on the bloodworm just dominates. It's an epic colour. So I wanted to change it up a bit. The water's pretty dirty up on this flat from the wind and that sort of thing. So that time we changed it up. You can see that black head, black UV head with that gold rush colour. That's a perfect dirty water. Yeah, buddy, perfect dirty water or low light presentation. That bit of sparkle and flash to help in that dirty water and low light, and that really nice black silhouette. So it's a great silhouette color with that UV head. I know a few guys as well love that black in clear water fishing. They like that black head because it is a very natural sort of head, doesn't reflect a lot of light. It's just got that bit of UV pop on that UV head, but it's not a very bright flashy head in terms of color. So they fish it with the natural plastic, and they fish that black in the clear water as well, especially in the fresh water as well. They fish that black head. So that's cool. We're having a beautiful session on the flats here. Got 3 nice grunter, 1 in the box for Sherry Lee, and we've put a bend in the rod. Oh yeah, there's a patch of bait and there's a fish in it. There's our brimbo, so we might have found a little patch of brimbos. Not a big fella, but he has drilled that black colour head, gold rush, plucky. So hopefully he's got a few mates with him. I can see a patch of fish there moving. So hopefully there's a bunch of them around us here. Just going to turn us around. We don't want to get in amongst them too far, but we do want to be able to reach them with the cast. Patch of bait just there. We caught one on one colour, so I'll change it in case they've, yep, fish on, in case they've seen that colour. They're like, our mate got dragged away on that colour, we're not going to eat it. What are you? Crazy looking critter. Oh no, brimbo. Brimbo, he's a little bit better fish. Fired up. So this is what you can, oh, there's some mullet there maybe. This is what can happen when you drift the flats. So you can go through a patch of fish and got to make the most of it. We'll get him away. I can see the bait still moving there. We don't want to drift on top of it, but we're just drifting within casting range of it. And it looks like there's, yeah, looks like there's a bunch of bream feeding on that bait. So we can have a bit of fun here and clock up a few brimbos. Hopefully there's a few bigger ones in there feeding as well, but doesn't really matter. 1 to 3 kilo gear, light gear, good fun. But that's that looks like a school of bream marauding across the flats, I'd say. So that's 3 in quick time. Got any bigger mates in there? Yep, fish on straight away. Yep, that's all happening on that little patch there. So basically in our freestyle fishing, we've covered water. We got onto a few grunter early. Now we've found ourselves a patch of bream. Not big bream, but we can now catch a handful of these guys and then keep drifting and see what's next thing we come across. Good fun. They love those 2.5 inch slimmies. And those slimmies look awesome on those UV heads, that's for sure. Matched up to suit the colour. So this one here is the bloodworm head, blood oil coloured plucky. There's a rattle. We might just have to find them again. Paddle back up, I can see the ripples on the water there, straight ahead of me there. That's either the bait or the fish. Could be the bream, could be the bait that they're feeding on. Again, I don't want to get right on top of them, otherwise I could shut them down totally. So I want to sit back off the school. Use this light 1 to 3 kilo gear to make a long cast up into the fish. Yep, fish on, there we go. Oh, come on, buddy. Oh. Not big fish, but they're definitely fired up, which makes for a bit of fun on the flats, that's for sure. See you, buddy. So just when you find them like this, you can mix your retrieve up as well. You might catch a few on a really twitchy retrieve, and then they might go off that, and you might have to try a slow roll. You might have to try flicking it. I don't know what those fish are. They're jumping out of the water, some of them. So the bream are obviously hanging with them, but might be fringe fin trevally or something. Yep, fish on. Fish on. What do we got there? Doesn't feel real big. Wowzers! How do you catch that guy? That's crazy. Oh, buddy, what are you thinking? Yep. Oh, no, I think I hooked into whatever that school of fish is then. Didn't actually get the bite. Let's go ahead of that school. Where are you? Yep, that's one we're on. Yep. Oh, what are you? Something interesting? You're just a Brembo, you really gave it a good crack. Yeah, he's a Brembo, but he's a better size one. Yeah, he's a bit better. That's better, a handful of bream. Happy with that. We just switched to the motor oil and pin that guy solid in the jaw. Oh, a little bit of claret coming out of there. We'll get you back in the water, mate. Although they're not big bream on the flats at this time of year up here, these yellowfin bream, they're still great fun because they're so aggressive. They hit it hard, and they definitely fight hard for their size, that's for sure. Especially on light gear, 1 to 3 kilo gear. Great way to have a bit of fun, just drift the flats and cover plenty of water. Find active fish. Don't forget to keep an eye out for that bait and water movement, fish feeding, that sort of thing. Like we're pretty much just blind cast, covered water, and got those 3 grunter, but we just made sure we're in the right sort of depth and weedy bottom and that sort of thing. Another great thing about this freestyle fishing, just drifting with the tide and drifting back with the tide, is you're fishing around a tide change. So that can often produce, yeah, there we go, there's a fish. That can often produce fish around that tide change, top of the high, you know, last of the run in. Oh, it's got a bit of power to it. Last of the run in, first of the run out. And also, you know, last of the run out, first of the run in. They're both great times to be fishing. And you kind of get double the chance, because if the fish might not bite on the run in, or they might not bite on the run out. You know, they might bite on one or the other. So you give yourself double the chance because you're fishing both tides. So, you know, we've been fishing an hour of run in. We've been fishing an hour of run in tide, and it's been pretty active and that sort of thing. It could turn to run out and it could shut down, or it could get better, or we could catch different species. Different species might switch on. So yeah, it's definitely a cool time of the tide to fish. and you get to just use that tide to take you where you want to go. So you can see when I'm fighting this fish, I'm keeping the rod tip towards the nose of the kayak. That keeps me nice and stable. I don't get bent side on, that sort of thing. The nose of the kayak will turn towards the fish. So if I try to fight it sideways or something like that, especially on heavier gear, 1 to 3 not so much, but it could tip the yak over or whatever. Whereas if I keep pulling the fish back towards the nose, it's turning the nose of the kayak to the fish. And then I can get a sleigh ride and get dragged along. Looks like we've got ourselves a nice little trev. Awesome fun on the flats. So this is the bloke that was busting up before, busting up the fish that we saw and that sort of thing, and we persisted and we got him. Awesome fun fish on the flats. Come on, little buddy. Just about out of puff. And you get in the net, get in the net. Beautiful. So with all that bait and all that activity on the flat, we saw some bust ups going on, and this was the guy doing it. So not big trevs, but awesome fun. 1 to 3 kilo gear. Just a cool little fish. Probably one of my favorite fish to catch. They fight hard, especially on light gear. They never give up. They fight right to the yak. Oh, there you go. What a beautiful little trev. Awesome fun fish. You're an awesome fun fish. That's on motor oil and motor oil again. So our motor oil head and our motor oil plucky. See you later, little buddy. He'll be back terrorizing him in no time. Brilliant. What a cool little session. Just drifting down with the tide and catching ourselves some grunter, brimbos, and now we got a trev as well. That's the great thing about the flats, especially flats like this in close proximity to deep water. You never know what's going to come feed up on these flats. We've had a session a little while back up on the flats where we got 8 different species in a session. Had one with my dad as well a little while back where we got 8 species in a session. So, and half of those were different to the other time, so it's just incredible the fish you can come across. Up on the flats you can even get snapper, sweet lip, mulloway, giant herring, queenfish, tailor, trevally, just never ending. So you can see we're just drifting, and we're at 0.7 again. So I've hardly even looked up at times to see where we're at, because we're pretty much just moving around this big flat, staying in that same sort of depth. Oh, eat it, buddy, eat it. Pause it. Eat it. Cruising around that. Cruising around in that 0.7 to 1 meter of water, flicking plackies around, stirring these fish up. But yeah, not really fishing particular structure or for a particular species. We've just chased bait and chased fish around the flat. We've drifted likely looking areas, covering water with the current flow, just spraying those casts around. All around the yak we've cast, and we're just looking for any activity that we can cast to. So we're not fixated on a particular edge or a particular weed edge or anything today, which sometimes we do. Sometimes we're very focused on one edge or one drain, and that's all we're doing. Whereas today we are just floating. We're just drifting with the tide, and we're just looking for what unfolds around us. And as long as we stay within our lane, which in this case is that sort of 1/2 meter to 2 meters of water, then the plastics that we've got on here will be effective. If we were geared up with a quarter, 1/8, 1/4 and 3/8, then we could pretty much just drift and fish every single piece of water depth change that we came across. So yeah, just suss out your area that you're in and have a look at what systems are around and how far you'll drift on an hour or two of tide, and then that tide will bring you back again. The other thing you can do is you might be over there drifting up with the tide. When the tide turns, you might drift down on a totally different bank, totally different area. That's a nice bream. Thanks, buddy. Yeah. That's a good bream. Oh, 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 settle down, settle down. Oh, we'll get him back in the water and get on with it. A couple little flicks over to the left, so let's go over here. Yep, 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 yep. As that moved into where those couple little flicks were, that fish ate that. So that was pretty cool. We cast over further than we needed to so that we could swim it naturally back past that fish. That's a decent bream. Look at that guy. That's a fair chunk. That'd be a 30 tipper. Alright. So that's our motor oil and motor oil combo again. Nice fish. We'll get him off and swim him. Alright, feels like our tide has topped out. We're not moving much at all at the moment. So when that tide tops out or bottoms out and you lose your run on that, so we've done our freestyle drift, we've just drifted down one way. Now we're going to turn around and drift back the other way. But at the moment with the slack tide is a great time to reposition. So if you want to go into mangrove edges or out to a deep ledge or wherever you want to move around to, that's a good time to move because you're not dealing with current flow from any direction. So you might take this time now to set up your drift back so that you're going to drift on the right area or the right angle that you want to drift. What you can also do is use it to prospect around a little and see if you can find any schools of bait or any fish moving around the area because you're not having to fight the current. So the fish can be a bit finicky on that slack stage of the tide and not really want to eat, but if you get there and poke that lure in their face enough times, you can sometimes get a reaction bite. So it's still worth fishing that slack section of the tide, especially if you're fishing deep water. It can be in your favor because you can get plastics down and work nice and deep. We'll just persist through the slack stage of the tide though. We'll just move around a bit because we're not fighting the current, and we'll just hit anything that looks like patches of bait or patches of fish or any sort of structure as well that we can find on the flat. Not a lot of structure on this flat, so we'll just throw big long casts, fan the area, paddle around, prospect, look for bait, look for active fish, and see if we can add a couple more before that tide turns and we start our drift back in the other direction. Whoa. Oh, that was a bream. That was a bream slurping something off the top. Let's get over there quickly into that area. Come on, fish. I heard you slurp. Yep, there he is. That's all you need. So that's been a little bit quiet, and we just heard that. And that was a bream eating something, maybe a prawn off the top. Made our cast over there. Got our fish. Beautiful. It's a nice bream too. I threw the beacon at him that time. So you can definitely see it. How's that? That's brilliant. That's one of my favorite things about fishing flats and shallows like that. Hear that slurp, make that cast to that area, and this fish is so fired up because he's either eaten or he's just tried to eat that prawn. Boom, straight on that plastic. That's the orange colour in a 1/8-10 and that HeadlockZ Finesse UV. Greasy prawn coloured 2.5-inch slim swims. That is going to slay over the yabby beds, but even here we've got patchy sand, so brilliant. So that was cool. As I was saying, you know, we're on the dead stage of the tide, so it's definitely, I'm not seeing the bait movement, I'm not seeing the fish feeding actively. It's pretty quiet. Then I'm just waiting for something to happen. Hear the slurp of a bream, make the cast, catch the fish. So definitely got to be aware of what's going on around you, and those little things like that can turn. Oh, there's another one, and he's on a prawn. I just saw the prawn skip. So they can turn a fishless session. There he is, still on the prawn. Yep, and there he is on my lure. So that can turn a fishless session into a fun session just by keeping those ears and eyes open. I just saw that fish. He was chasing a little jelly prawn. The prawn kicked a couple of times. He chased it a couple of times, and then he saw this larger, tasty looking presentation come his way, off the prawn straight onto our lure. Another decent bream, just summer flats bream. He's away. See you later, buddy. So that's positive. That tells me there's a few jelly prawns up on the flat. So the fish are eating them. So it's worth blind casting around here a bit because there'll be fish stalking up here. But that's 2 fish in 2 casts where I've heard them eat the prawn or seen them chase the prawn and made the cast and catch the fish. So yeah, definitely very cool fishing up on the flats when those fish are feeding like that. Buckle up. I reckon that's a mullet school up there. Let's paddle up and see what we can find on the mullet school. Let's work up beside them. You might be able to see them ahead of me here. They're pushing a big V in the water as the school moves. So I'm basically going to slip up in between the school here. I've got a school on the left and a school on the right. We'll have a shot at these guys first. Yep, there's a fish. So hopefully we haven't jagged the mullet and we've got my fish out of the school. Yeah, that's a brimbo. Brimbo in amongst the mullet school. Not too much noise, buddy. I don't want to spook the fish. So there you go, we're on the slack tide still. We made that move up to in amongst this bait and stuff that we can see here. And that's another decent bream. You can see he's fired up and feeding. He's absolutely scoffed that. Yep, there's a top, there's a top. Yep, we're on. It's a small bream. Just a small bream, but that's alright. What are you going off behind me? Turtle. So that fish was tapping it and you can see I just kept winding it, wound him onto the lure, so didn't pull it away from him or anything. Just wound it and he was biting it and I just kept winding and eventually he ate the entire thing and found the hook. Well, that's pretty good. We've probably done our tide now. It feels like it's turning back around. So we've done our, we've done our hour of run in. Messed around a bit on the slack tide as well and found a, whoa, yeah, was that a tailer? Messed around a bit on the slack tide. He blew up on that. We messed around on the slack tide and found a couple of other fish. And then the tide's turning and we're heading back the other way. So, you know, maybe an hour and a quarter or something and we've caught a bunch of fish. That thing came out of the water. Oh, he bit me off. I thought that might happen. That was a tailer. He came out of the water behind my lure. So I sped it up and he ate it. But I wonder how many of them are here. We might try the beacon. Alright, sadly we are drifting off our mullet schools and heading for home. But yeah, there's a fish. Make the most of these little pockets of bait as we drift back. Whoa, getting a bit crankier. Oh, nice bream. Nice brimbo. Whoa, it's a big flatty trying to eat him. Oh, wow. Look at the size of that flatty. Come on, buddy, eat that bream. I'll give you my placky. That's what I'll do, and you'll eat that. Did you see the size of that? That was a nice flatty. Let's give him this placky. Here you go, flatfish. Eat this placky. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. That just, man, that mind-blowing. I hope we got that on camera so that you could see that. That was really cool. Oh, I'm blown away. There's a fish. There's a lot of bait just here where I am. It's loaded with bream by the feel of it, but man, that flatty, wish I could have got him to eat. Unbelievable. He's a decent bream as well. He's alright. Not giants, but not micros. Oh, what's going on there? of craziness going on there. What a mad session. Hey folks, there you go, a little bit of freestyle fishing. So remember, always safety first. Maybe have a look, do a bit of research on the area you're going to fish, but it can be pretty fun just to throw the yak or the boat in or whatever for an hour or two and just drift with the tide. Cover water, cover structure. You know, you might be fishing particular depth like I was today, around that, focusing around that meter mark, or you might be just having a few different presentation rigs so that you can just fish the depths and the shallows as you drift along. But it's cool, you drift, you cover water, you learn about the areas you're fishing, you learn about the structure that's there, and you might pick up a new PB or a mixed bag of species as well while you're out on your adventure. So we're just catching the tide back now, back to our launch point, and then we're going to rip it out and go and have a feed for lunch. Righto, fish on.